It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Good Monday morning. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders podcast. Jim Meehan with the Spokesman-Review, Richard Fox, television analyst on Gonzaga basketball for KHQ and SWX. Foxy, we're going to get all the news and notes of the week for the Zags, but first off, the Super Bowl wasn't much of a game. I think it was a 1-point spread, Kansas City, before the game, and it ended up being it wasn't as close as that final score, 40-22. It was pretty much a 35-point game for a lot of it. So, Foxy, what's the Super Bowl like in the Fox household?
You know, we were pretty light with it this year. We just had my mother-in-law over, and my wife, who's a much better human being than me in lots of ways, put together a pretty nice little football Sunday spread. We had pigs in a blanket, a couple really good dips. She made nachos, and we put together some kind of fun family bets. So the kids, everyone got $1 or whatever per bet, and who scores the first touchdown, who wins the game, blah blah blah, and we just had fun. So the kids actually watched the whole game, and I think we were probably due for a blowout. I think the last 3 Super Bowls have been really good. Really good. So, but I had Philly winning, so I wasn't mad about that. It was good. How about you guys?
Very low key. I didn't get back home till about 2:30, so I missed all the pregame stuff. And then during the game, I was doing the outline for the show, so I missed a ton of commercials, or just was kind of not paying attention to them like usual. Was there any good ones? I didn't even know.
I mean, from my perspective, I thought everything about the Super Bowl production was just odd. I didn't understand the graphics during the game. It didn't feel like a big game. And then there's not a single commercial. Maybe the David Beckham and Matt Damon one was kind of clever.
I did see that one, yeah.
But other than that, man, I don't know. I thought they were all. I'm just getting older, maybe, and grumpier. I don't know, or maybe I'll choose to say I'm getting older, and my taste is more refined. Put it that way, and so it's a little harder to maybe kind of wow me, but. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was nothing about it felt like a big game. Maybe it's just because it was such a bad game. But the commercials just seem to be getting more and more kind of out there. And
they keep trying to outdo themselves, I think.
Right.
But no, it wasn't memorable. And most of them are.
There you go. That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
Well, let's catch up on the Zags here. They go 2-0 this week. They're 14th in the net, so maybe dropped a spot or two there. The Gales are 21 in the net. They did lose a game along the way here, so the two-game lead now over Gonzaga and USF. The Dons come to town Thursday. They are 60, I believe, in the net. So pretty good. They've had a great conference run here. They're the team that beat St. Mary's. They're playing pretty well. They just won at LMU, so I think that'll be an interesting game Thursday in the Kennel. As I said, with the Dons beating St. Mary's is kind of a good news, bad news. It kind of brings the Gales back to the pack a little bit. Still 2 games clear. Zags have 1 game with them remaining. But the Dons are now 10-3 in conference. So they have a half-game lead, technically. They're tied in the loss column over Gonzaga. So that'll be a big game for solo second in the conference. And with that, you get second or first in this league, you are in the semifinals, and you miss that quarterfinal round and an extra day of playing and the back-to-backs, all those things. So the bracket projections, again, just kind of treaded water. Those weren't the kind of wins that are going to move you up if you get them. They beat LMU and they beat Pacific. So they're in that 8-9 range still. The ones that kind of do, cumulative, they take, 50, 80 brackets, whatever, and balance them out. They're in the 9 range there. So still kind of in that space where they're safe, but not feeling too comfortable with a couple weeks left. And Selection Sunday is March 16th.
Crazy.
It's coming. And the Zags, I think, are down to 6 regular season games.
Mm-hmm.
This week, USF, and then Pepperdine. And then they close with Washington State, St. Mary's, San Francisco, Santa Clara. Those last 3 games are all quad 1. Wazoo is a quad 2. So that will be the make or break point here to whether the Zags continue that streak of NCAA tournaments. And, it actually could rise quite a bit. If you sweep those games, that adds a pretty healthy amount of credential to your credentials, boosts them pretty good. So we'll see what happens. We've got Ryan Nemhard breaking records again, his own record,
Mm-hmm.
the assist record for single season. He owns 1 and 2 on the list now. And, we're kind of getting to the major part of the season here, Foxy. You still kind of in that, comfortable, but not all too comfortable with where they stand going into the last 6 games?
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess the way I look at it when you ask that question is, if Selection Sunday was tomorrow, do I think that they would be in? And I do think they'd be in. Yeah. With that being said, the room for error, to your point, is not much.
Yeah.
And, even if you take it out, the last 8 games here left in the season, the only against the bottom half of the league is Pepperdine on Saturday, right? You've got 2 with San Francisco Thursday at home, and then on the road to finish up the year, I believe. I think that'll be at the Chase Center, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
You've got you're on the road in Pullman. Now, WSU is certainly reeling a bit here and not thriving in the league in the way I thought they might after they played Gonzaga fairly well, if I remember correctly, in the first half here in Spokane. But nonetheless, that's going to be a tough game on the road. I expect there'll be a lot of Coug fans that will make that drive from Spokane to see that game. And then obviously you've got St. Mary's at home for senior night, which is a whole different animal. We'll talk about it when we get closer to it, but there's a lot of seniors. There's going to be a lot of emotion on that floor. And then obviously on the road to finish Santa Clara and San Francisco. So in the Bay, you've got one, for lack of a better way to describe it, one gimme, one game where you don't have to play your best and you're probably going to win. They have to bring it every night down the stretch. It's going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, no question. No question. Well, let's go back through the week, kind of a take care of business week for the Zags.
Mm-hmm.
Heavily favored in both games, and they ended up winning pretty comfortably in both games. First off, LMU in the kennel on Thursday. The Naismith Hall of Fame has not requested video of stretches of that game.
Oh, my God.
They start off, I think the Zags scored on the first 6 possessions, 5 for 5 from the field and a couple free throws. And I thought, this is kind of the way you want to start a game. You get out quick, you put a team that's an underdog in a big hole. And then the offense kind of went into a slumber for a pretty good chunk of the rest of the half. And I think the score was 27-24 at half, which you just do not picture with a game involving the Zags, unless it's St. Mary's, who, the possessions are just going to be so scarce. But midway through the second half, LMU is up 46-45, and I'm sure I wasn't alone that thoughts of the Lions' upset over Gonzaga a couple years ago in the kennel were kind of wandering through the back of my mind here. Are we going to see a repeat? But from then on, 28-5, I think, was the run the Zags put on them. And it seemed like Gonzaga kind of ranged between shaky and then just top level. When they got hot, they got real hot. What did you see change in those final 10 minutes, Foxy?
Well, I mean, Caleb Battle just kind of kept his foot on the pedal and, got to the line, I think 15 to 16, in the second half. I mean, I thought it was really interesting. Caleb's, I don't know if it's been the doghouse or what it's been, but certainly he has not been playing well since that Oregon State game. For whatever they saw on film, they focused in on his effort and what he was doing on both ends of the floor, and that's when we saw Emmanuel obviously step in the starting lineup for a period there. And Caleb really, I think, struggled with that. He had a nice game against OSU at home, but on either side of that, I think three of those four games during that stretch. I mean, I'm doing this off memory, but I want to say like 4 points in three games.
I think it was two.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he had what was it, the game at Portland where maybe he didn't even look to shoot. I mean,
Oh, shit.
it was. I've been saying this. I don't have as much confidence as I once did in this long season of what the ceiling is for this group. But the one player that I think that swings them from their floor to their ceiling the most is Battle. So you have to live with the misses if you want the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just really impressed with the staff's decision. We played 37 minutes in that game. The staff's decision to roll with him, and quite frankly, let him just try to cook and see where he could go. And ultimately, he didn't shoot the ball very well. I mean, 4 of 13 for the game. 2 of 7 from 3, but he got to the line. I just liked his approach.
Yeah.
I thought he was a huge part of what they did down the stretch. And then Huff, I thought, was a really nice kind of jolt there in the second half. 11 points.
Yeah.
Was really efficient. Got good good position on his touches in the paint. But it was just a bizarre game. I mean, calling it was just. Greg and I are looking at each other and talking on air like I don't even know. I mean, I don't have an analysis for this. This is so bizarre. I've never seen this type of just the struggle offensively.
Yeah.
I mean, look, initially to start that game, it felt like Gonzaga defensively was as engaged as we've seen in a long time. That first 5 minutes in particular. I mean, LMU had, I think, 8 turnovers by around the 12-minute mark. And then LMU settled down and didn't, I think only had 1 turnover down the stretch. They didn't shoot it at a great clip, but they hit just enough shots. And then Gonzaga just could not hit anything. And quite frankly, that's been a theme here. If we look at the last 5, or rather the last 3 games, I mean, Gonzaga's shooting under 18% from 3.
Yeah.
I mean, they just haven't shot it well, and it was just really evident against LMU. But, Nembhard had 2 assists to start the game, didn't have another one in the second half. I don't know the last time Gonzaga was negative assist to turnover. They had 4 assists, only in 6 turnovers in the first half. That just doesn't happen. But, Ryan, I thought really settled down in the second half. Just 7 assists, no turnovers, scored it a little bit. And then you couple that with Battle and Huff. They had just enough. It was another kind of head scratcher from Ike. At least scoring the ball. I mean, he rebounded it well in the first half. I think 7 rebounds, but just 2 of 6 from the field. Just an ugly game. I don't know. It certainly felt like the game was going to get away from them just because they couldn't score it. But then they got to the line, and then Gonzaga ended up putting a bit of that full 3/4 court pressure on LMU, and LMU got sped up. So while they had been really burning the clock, they had been comfortable offensively. All of a sudden, they were sped up, uncomfortable, took some difficult shots. I think created just enough of a cushion where eventually they kind of lost, grip of the rope.
And that press, that 3/4 court press, worked against Pacific, I thought.
Yeah.
2 days later. But defensively, Zags did a pretty good job on LMU's top 3 scorers. Same thing happened at Pacific with their top 2 scores. It was funny. We talked to Battle after the game and kind of asked him about his because I think he had 2 scoreless games, 2 points at St. Mary's. Then he had 23 and 24 around him. And we asked him about that stretch and being a starter and coming out and now back in the starting lineup. And he is always one with great self-belief. He said, everybody's talking about me being in a slump. I am never in a slump. He said, I am a wired scorer. And that is very true. He is wired to score. So that kind of was the jolt of him not taking a shot at Portland was, what is happening here? But so he kind of got back on schedule, I think. And you're right. And we've talked about it. They need him. They need him to kind of take that next step. He's different than what they have. And he talked about defense quite a bit. So I think that message team-wide has gotten through to a lot of these guys. And it probably at the expense of some of their offense. I asked Mark Few about it after Pacific. They only scored 78 against Pacific, 73 against LMU. Those aren't the numbers we're used to seeing.
Right.
And he said, yeah, we have been spending an inordinate amount of time on the defensive end. And he said the results have been, obviously they're worth it. They've had 5 really good statistic games in a row on that end of the floor. I think the highest point total is maybe 62 in that time. The highest shooting percentage is 40, and that was Pacific, who hit quite a few shots at the end of the game to get to that and to get to 61 points. So that's helped. Kind of you see the message, you implement the message, you see the results, that helps. But he said, we probably need to spend more time on the offensive end because we've been kind of hit or miss there for a little bit. So I suppose as a coach, if it's not one thing, it's another. You kind of get one side fixed, you got to change the other. But well, let's go on to Pacific. That game, again, a little bit of a sleepy start, a little bit like LMU. The offense was in and out of sync, but the defense was not only pretty solid, but it was forcing turnovers. And I thought that measured up with their goals pretty well. That press helped in that regard. And I'll be honest, I thought the Tigers, I counted 5 air balls maybe in the first 15 minutes or so. And their big kid, Gardner, 7-footer, missed 3 shots just right by the rim. Gimmies most of the time, but he didn't make any of them. And then their 2 best players, I think, are Elijah Fisher and Elias Ralph. Both pretty good, kind of 6'5", 6'6" wings that can bounce it and get inside. They both bounced it, got inside, and missed close range shots that they probably normally make. So I thought Pacific had a hand in Gonzaga's defense, but I did think the Zags were much better in terms of staying in front of folks, applying more pressure on the opponent rather than being reactive. Some things we've seen over the last 5 games from them. What'd you see watching the Tigers try to score against Gonzaga?
Yeah, it was the air balls against Pacific, and it was the shot clock violations the Lions had early in that first half too. You talked about the shooting. I was looking at that too. I mean, past 5 have the basketball. So second half of St. Mary's to now, teams are shooting 25% from 3. Part of that is teams don't may have an off night, but I think defensively you have a big part to do with that. And it's evident that this group is I think more committed to that end, might be a way of saying it. Maybe that's not the right way, but it's certainly more top of mind. And you saw that, I think, for stretches against Pacific. That's a really hard game. I think it's a really hard road game just because Stockton's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's not one of those games where they sell it out. It's not a high energy. I mean, typically not a high energy building. So when you're Gonzaga and you go on the road, I mean, typically you're going into a pretty hostile environment or a full house or pretty close to it. And there's kind of a natural energy in the building and you can feed off of that. I think when you go down to Pacific, you got to create a little bit of that on your own. So that can make that challenging. But just another solid game for Nemhard was plus 25 net, plus minus. I mean, just ho hum. His number didn't jump out all that much, 7 points, 8 assists, and 3 turnovers, but you saw his ability to control it. Another really good game off the bench from Huff, 17 points, was really efficient. And Ike, I thought a good response. I mean, only 17 minutes, but he was 6 of 9.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure there's much more to say other than, Pacific's not a very good team. It's difficult to go down there and get excited to play. This group found a way to get it done, and now you've got the grind that is the home stretch in front of you.
I asked some of the players about it. There was 3,100 in the building.
It seats like 10, doesn't it? I mean,
well, yeah, it's a big building, and they have the upper section covered in black tarp.
Right.
And Gonzaga had a pretty good section of fans there still. So it was maybe the quietest game I can remember, crowd noise wise and intensity wise, other than COVID, when there was 40
Right.
people in the gym. Especially on the road, even if LMU's not sold out or Pepperdine isn't sold out, Pepperdine's probably next closest in terms of decibel level being down. But
Right, but at least Pepperdine,
it's
I mean,
cold. Yeah.
It's a small gym.
Yeah.
They've got that super annoying DJ who plays music like throughout the dead period. I mean, like they fill the box with noise, and there's just it's a high school gym. I mean, it's a pretty underwhelming facility, but I mean, it's just Pacific's facility is so big. It's cavernous, and yeah, I think it's a tough place to get up to play as a player. So
I will give the Zags credit in terms of pregame. They were flying around, and guys were putting in, full sweat and warm-ups, and looked excited to play. And again, it was a tough game to probably get totally charged up with the the opponent's record and all that. But again, took care of business, did what they needed to do. I thought guys just sort of took their turns offensively. It was Ryan didn't have an assist for the first, I want to say 10, 12 minutes. And then he got 1 and 2, 3, 4 by half. And pretty cool. The record breaker was a lob on the break to Battle for a dunk. That gave him 244 assists on the year, broke his own record. To do it kind of with some style.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was pretty cool. But you had Huff have a really nice stretch. You had Ike just kind of take over at the start of the second half. I think he had 11 points just like that. Michael Ajayi had another good game. He is kind of rounding into form here. I think he's had 3 double-digit games in the last 5. Another guy that you need.
Yeah, I was just going to say, last 5 games, he's averaging 10 points, 8 rebounds. To your point, 3 games in double digits, 2 games with 2 points.
Yeah.
But what I really like about what Michael's doing is he's rebounding it at a high level. His energy's there. I think he's the most positive of the group. He's kind of the most rah-rah of the group, just positive all the time. And
he doesn't take plays off. And that people see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if he can average 9 and 7 down the stretch, that's enormous for them, because he can also, does a good job defensively. I think that's a good call by you to call him out. I agree.
He can be a difference maker, maybe not to the extent Battle is, and rewarded for it the other night too. I think you're seeing that more and more as the season goes along, like with Inocente and in Battle now being back in the out of the doghouse. He plays 26 minutes the other night at Pacific. Ben Gregg played 14. Benny had an odd stat line. He had 4 rebounds.
No.
He had 5 assists. The high-low was he threw 1 in there to EK for a layup or a dunk, and he turned to the bench and was pointing. So that had to be something they saw or schemed up. No points. So he plays 14 minutes. Michael gets 26, basically.
Well, Benny
I think
didn't take,
this,
but Ben didn't take a shot.
yeah, no shots, but he
Yeah.
was active. I mean, he
Yeah.
was doing his thing. But so I think that's what you're seeing. If Battle's rolling, Battle's going to play. If
Right.
Benny's rolling, Benny's going to play. Excuse me. And then they've got this luxury of 8 or 9 guys now that if the first guy isn't doing it, they can find help off the bench. So big game coming Thursday. San Francisco, always a very good defensive team, very solid on the offensive end, not a lot of weaknesses. 2 great guards, guys who seem like they've been there a long time. Malik Thomas, Marcus Williams, good size, penetration, can shoot it a little bit, can score it in a lot of ways, get to the line, put pressure on you, freedom, all those things that, the Zags have had some issues with at times this year. Add another one, the Beasley kid.
Off the bench.
He's kind of the one who helped him get past St. Mary's down the stretch. So 3 really good guards, maybe not the front court that they've had in the past, but, very serviceable guys in there. And I think this is why Mark was a little hesitant to make a sweeping statement about the defense. The teams that they've got to play now, San Francisco, Wazoo, St. Mary's, the numbers aren't, crazy offensively, but it's like going to the dentist's office trying to guard those guys. And then obviously Santa Clara with what they've done and what they did to the Zags in the kennel. So I think the gauge of Gonzaga's defensive progress will show up more here in this next couple of weeks, beginning with the Dons. What do you make of the guard matchup? I think that's from Gonzaga's end. That's going to be the big key to how they defend those 3 guards.
Well, to your point about San Francisco, just first of all, as far as kind of who they are, I mean, they're really good on both ends of the floor at the 3-point line. In WCC play, they're tops in the league, holding teams to 25% from the 3-point line. They make a little over 9 a game, which is second best in the league. So they can shoot it. I mean, their top 3 scorers, Thomas, Williams, and Riley. Riley, a freshman, who's pretty impressive at 6'6". They all shoot it better than 38% from the 3-point line. So, and that's kind of the theme throughout San Francisco's roster is even the bigs that they have coming off the bench, while they don't shoot a high percentage, Wang comes up, he's a starter rather, 32%. Lingard, a 7-footer, kind of lean bodied, but good athlete. He's shooting around 30% from 3, just 2 of 13 in the last 3 games. But both those bigs, you have to respect their ability to stretch it. So San Francisco is going to have 5 guys on the floor throughout the course of the game that can all make a 3. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting defensive challenge, I think, for Gonzaga, where San Francisco is going to try to spread them out. San Francisco doesn't really have a low block scorer. Newberry, who has been with them for a long time, he got hurt. My understanding.
He's a nice player.
He's a very nice player. He could also stretch it out a little bit, but he had more size and could catch it on a low block and put some pressure on you that way. The Dons will turn it over. Negative turnover margin in league play, which is kind of surprising for them. I don't know if they really have. I mean, Marcus is probably a point guard that's the closest they have to that, but he's more of a
both combos, really.
Yes, exactly. Like they don't really have a true point guard in the way of Nemhard or Odom or some of these other Marshallonis at St. Mary's. They kind of handle the ball. They handle the ball handling duties collectively. So on one end, that's kind of exciting for your ball club because you can have more than one guy initiate your offense and get you into stuff. But on the other hand, you don't have someone whose focused is on, what are we trying to do? Where I want to get the ball. So I think at times they can get sloppy with it. It's not a deep team.
No.
When they beat St. Mary's, they basically played 7 guys. 9 guys got logged minutes, but you've got Beasley off the bench, and then I can't remember the other guy. Might have been Wang came off the bench in that game. But Beasley's interesting. I mean, he's only 5'11", but I mean, last 4 games, he's averaging 14 points, shooting 50% from the field, and he's a perfect 18 of 18 from the free throw. I mean, for a small guard to get to the line 18 times in 4 games, it says something. I mean, they will get downhill, they'll attack you. So I think Mark's absolutely right. And quite frankly, had he not said that, I still would have told you the same thing. I kind of still need to see it to believe it on the defensive end,
On the top
despite
end
how,
teams. Yeah.
yep. These are, San Francisco going to be very well organized, and obviously Kyle Bankhead's one of my closest friends, and but objectively, he's always puts together
A great scout. Yeah.
a great scout. They're going to have some level, some wrinkle. They will know, they're going to play Gonzaga towards their deficiencies, their weaknesses. You're going to see. I don't know what Kyle. I won't talk before the game. I'm sure of it, but you're going to see them try to take something away entirely for Gonzaga.
Yes.
How is Gonzaga going to adjust to that? Is that going to be they're going to double EK and Huff every single time? Is it going to be they're going to just double Nemhard on every single ball screen and force somebody else to beat them? It'll be a really interesting kind of chess match. And San Francisco's playing with so much confidence. They've not been great on the road this year. They're 15-0 at home, but they've been close. And the last thing I'd say about it, Jim, is I brought this up last week, and I brought it up during the broadcast against LMU. What I'm looking for 2 things down the stretch here. How are they defensively, and how are the other players? Hickman has to play well on Thursday night. Last 3 games, he's averaging less than 7 a game, shooting under 17% from 3, 2 of 12.
Yeah.
He's having a career year. I mean, going into the LMU game, he was shooting the second best 3-point percentage, I think, since 2000. Dickau's just the only one ahead of him.
Yep.
So his percentage going into this week was as good as anybody they've ever had. But there just seems to be something missing. And shooters are going to have stretches. He has to keep shooting the ball, but they need him to make some on Thursday night. Battle the last 2 games is averaging 20, but he's 2 of 13 from 3, 49% from the field. It's the free throws, 24 of 25 from the line. Now, I really don't care if his shooting percentage isn't much better Thursday, but he's getting to the line. That's kind of like Moneyball, right? I just want to get on base. So if he's getting to the line, you'll love that. But can he knock down something from the perimeter? And I'll be really interested to see. It feels like Emmanuel's locked himself in here a little bit to what they're trying to do, but he's not giving them any offense. Last 4 games, 4 points, 2 of 12 from the field, 0 of 9 from 3. Now, I know he's doing other things, and I know defensively they really like him, but I don't think you can lose Stromer here down the stretch. I mean, the one thing Dusty was doing for a period of time there was he was making the 3-point shot, and we both thought he turned a corner to start conference play. Now, that hasn't happened. To me, it's, what do they look like defensively, and do the others come and play? Is it, Nemhard's, I can tell you right now, Nemhard's going to play well. I'm betting that Ike is going to play well, unless they throw the kitchen sink at him and he just, he's facing a double all night. I think he's going to play well. What do the others look like?
Well, that you mentioned Bankhead being in charge of the scout. To me, on paper, and if you flip it to USF's side of the ball, the Zags probably have the advantage inside. I mean, numerically, body-wise, you've got EK, you've got Huff in a good stretch. The fours you're getting a lot out of the fours lately with Greg and Ajayi, the combo. So that's what I'm wondering, how they will defend Gonzaga's bigs. And guessing by their 3-point shooting of late, they're gonna try to get the ball out of their hands. And maybe how they guard ball screen will be, one of the wrinkles that they throw at them, trying to take away the roll, and trying to make Battle and Hickman and maybe even Ryan shoot 3 balls. If they're hitting them, they adjust. If they're not, and the team hasn't been hitting threes, that's maybe the factor that's going to swing how they guard the Zags on Thursday. But I think USF with that win, I mean, to beat, they've not beat St. Mary's in several years, and kind of to break through there and now have a chance to do the same with Gonzaga. They haven't beat the Zags in a while either. I think that did wonders for their psyche, and I think they're going to come up here with a lot of confidence. Like we said, that's second place solo on the line. Both teams want to try to catch St. Mary's, but if St. Mary's takes care of their end, it's going to be very hard to do. Second place comes with a lot of perks. Let's get a thought on Pepperdine. They did everything but beat Washington State and Pullman over the weekend. I think they led quite a bit of that game. I think they've got a kid from San Francisco, a big that's kind of versatile, was the leading scorer in the conference, Todorovic. He had 30 against Washington State. He had 4 threes. He wasn't terrific against the Zags the first time around, but that was the game. Odom, the point guard, Olvera, the wing, really tore up the Zags. I think both had career highs.
Yep, 27 and 24 respectively. Yep.
Now, Olvera only played 5 minutes against WSU, so maybe he's fallen out of favor or struggling of something. I'm not sure. But Odom had 18 and 11 assists against the Cougs. So they score 82 on the Zags, 50 in the second half, if I remember right, 86 on Washington State. Kind of maybe a sneaky challenge for Gonzaga's defense. How they flipped it against Oregon State from 97 or whatever it was in Corvallis to 60 in the Kennel. We'll see if the Zags can do something similar defensively when the Waves come in Saturday night. What do you think?
Well, we called that game down in Malibu. That was an interesting game in that Odom picked up a couple quick fouls, and the Pepperdine just elected to sit him for such a large stretch of that first half. I'll never understand that as an underdog. I mean, I just think coaches get in these kind of quirky bad habits. You've got at the time we had a different probably feeling for where Gonzaga was. You're trying to pull off that upset. You need him on the floor. When they brought him in to finish the first half, but certainly to start that second half, he was electric. Odom, I mean, you saw his speed was a real problem for Gonzaga. He made some tough shots, but he just got guys involved, had 8 assists. Certainly his three-point shot appears to improve. He was 2 of 5 in that game on the season. And then Oliveira was, I mean, you thought he was a junior. And he went right at battle. Those two were talking throughout the course of the game, and Oliveira just looked really, really comfortable. It's going to be a challenge for Pepperdine. They basically played 5 guys in that game against Gonzaga. They had one, I'm looking at the box score, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 0 minutes, basically under 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 10 minutes. Saunders came in that stretch in the first half for Odom, basically. They don't have a lot of depth. They lost so much when they had the turnover at the coaching staff turnover last year. They don't have a lot of depth. How's that going to play on the road? I'll be really interested to see. But, I like their starting 5. They've got real size. Odom's a real player. So I'll be interested to see, but that should be a game Gonzaga handles relatively comfortably just because of their, the advantage they have when it comes to numbers and quality of depth, and you're playing at home. But maybe you're right. Maybe it is a sneaky game. I mean, you're coming off, regardless, we'll see what happens Thursday night, but that's an 8:00 tip. Mark hates those. All these coaches hate that late tip.
So do I.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, the older I get, the earlier I go to bed. So I'll be interested to see, but there's nothing about Pepperdine and how their season's going that I think that they're a real challenge for Gonzaga.
Yeah. Ryan Nembhard, year 2 for him there at Gonzaga. The dude is just a next level assist man, passer, patience. pick and roll. Sometimes he looks like he's going in slow motion on that pick and roll, just waiting for things to develop. Transition, there just isn't anybody better that you'll see. And now he is number one, number two on the assist list career. Numbers 244, 243. He's got 6 games, maybe 2 Vegas, whatever in the NCAAs. I mean, he's going to put that number way out of reach for the next, contender to try to break it. If you look at all of Gonzaga's great point guard play they've had for 25 years, Santangelo, Dickow, Stepp, Ravio, Pargo, Bolden, Pangos. I'm sure I'm missing that Perkins, Jalen, Andrew Nemhard. They've had, it's just been hand the baton off one after another. But in terms of sheer passing and kind of almost deferring his offensive game at times just to have other guys get going, I can't think of anybody who's been better, more consistent. There's a lot of things that go into point guard play. There's 2 ends of the court: defense, leadership, scoring, whatever. But passing, assisting, I don't see a peer there to Ryan over this run they've had for 25 years.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, I was very, very. I really liked Josh Perkins. I thought he was a very underrated guy. And I'm looking at his stats now, but underappreciated while he was here. I think that's the closest I can think to. I mean, Josh was never a big time scorer for Gonzaga. It always felt like his game was predicated on the pass first kind of approach.
Yeah.
I think Ryan is the same way. Ryan's better in both those categories. Certainly Josh was a more consistent 3-point shooter during the duration of his career. I think ended up around 38, 39%. But I'm not sure he had the same ability to finish around the basket. And, Ryan has really developed that pull up from 12 to 15, 16 feet, particularly coming off that ball screen action. But Ryan is, it's like Houdini. Just in some of these passes he delivers, I don't think his teammates know that they're open. And they do agree. Half the time on these broadcasts, I talk about what a great catch. I don't know. I don't think they see it coming. And they still, Ike and Greg and these guys still find a way to corral the ball, and then they finish. I mean, they just have to turn and finish. There's no, there's no skill required. I just catch it, turn, shoot. So I'm not sure we could say enough about him. Without just belaboring the point. He is a fabulous player. The more I watch him, as small as he is, there's something about the way he plays at this level that I just imagine him at the next level with more space, better players, a high level athlete at every spot on the floor, where he's just, at least offensively, if his 3-point shot can improve. People forget Andrew was not a high-level 3-point shooter going into the league, and has worked his way into being more than serviceable behind the 3-point line.
Jalen too.
I think that part of his game will improve. I think offensively he's an NBA point guard.
Yeah.
Now the question is, can he guard at that level on the other end, just given his lack of size, and he's not the quickest guy in the world, but to be fair, he's also very, very heady. A guy who I think is going to understand tendencies and be able to probably mask a little bit of that. But at 6 foot or so, it's just that's a tall proposition, no pun intended. But I think he's an NBA caliber point guard on the offensive end. Without him, I cannot fathom what this season would look like for this team. It's going to be an awfully big hole to fill come next year.
Yeah. No, he's, like I said, it's hard to rank all those point guards overall. But in sheer passing assist terms, he's just a step ahead defensively of the defensive team opponent. he's like the quarterback who throws the tight end open. You know, he looks guarded and then he just maneuvers it a foot this way. And
Right.
he does that all the time with those bigs, all the time. Just a remarkable season. True contender for the Cousy Award. I don't think the list is very long, maybe one or two other guys. Braden Smith, the Purdue guy, is probably right there in the conversation with him too. But I would think he would be in the top 2 or 3 for that award.
Well, it'll be, that's part. I mean, it's certainly not going to be top of mind, and not something that they A will or B should talk about. But if you can get hot here down the stretch, not only does that certainly improve your team's propositions, but when you start thinking about these end of season awards, particularly for Ryan, being 24-7 or 25-7, whatever it is, certainly feels different than being 21-19.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for his sake that that he gets that recognition at the end of the year, because he's had that kind of season.
Yeah. Well, Foxy, I think that'll do it. Unless you want to talk some more. Are you good, or
I'm good for now.
Behaving? Do you need to do anything with the puppy? Where are we at?
She's been silent now this whole podcast, which makes me very, very nervous. So she's on the other side of the house. So we'll see if anything's chewed up. My hope is that it's not. And I got a feeling we'll have plenty more to talk about next week, brother. We got the San Francisco game, obviously, and then we've got a couple big ones to talk about heading into next week. So
yeah, should be a fun couple of weeks here. The rest of the regular season and beyond. Well, that's going to do it for the Zags Basketball Insiders podcast. Thank you, Foxy. Thank you, Christy Burns, as always. We'll be back next Monday. I'll post this on spokesman.com. You can find us on YouTube, Apple, wherever you find your podcasts. We're there. Just search for the Zags Insiders podcast. Always happy to do it. Foxy, have a good week. We'll see you.
Too.
You got Thursday or no?
I don't, but I got Saturday.
Saturday. Okay, we'll catch you Saturday. We'll catch everybody else back here on Monday. Thanks for joining us.